Did you go over the questions? You feeling good?
I didn't go over any questions.
Good.
Yeah, no, I don't want to go over them.
Okay. Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Joel. I'm the host of Talk It Out, and this is season 1, episode 1. And so we're just here to learn from leaders and influencers, to listen and to learn. And so today, got a very special guest. Is Ethan Vanse. He is from Church on the Move, Broken Arrow. What's going on, man?
Come on, somebody. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here with you, hanging out. And so we're just going to dive right in. And so if people know you, you have a gift for communication.
Okay.
You have it.
If you say so, that's good. That's good.
You're a great talker.
Yeah, I like people to know that until I stumble over my words, and then it's nice to feel like an amateur. Yeah, just normal. Yeah.
Well, let's kind of take it back. How did you kind of learn that you like to communicate?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you don't know much about me, I have 4 sisters. My mom is one of 4 girls, and so I grew up, and her sisters are all very, very close, and so I grew up around girls my whole life. Yeah. So the reason that I tell you that is because if you have sisters, especially if you have older sisters, you know this. They answer questions for you in public. Yeah. So if you're ever with your sisters and somebody says, "How old are you?" You don't get to say, "I'm 4 years old." Your sisters are really proud and they say, "He's 4, almost 5." And so you kind of grow up with this repressed vocabulary just bubbling under the surface. So I think part of it was, I've just always loved to talk. But then also being around, I say that a little bit jokingly, being around so many girls, there's always talking about everything. Yeah. So many words. And so if you want your opinion heard, you have to be good at getting in the mix and having a conversation and verbalizing what you're feeling and all that kind of stuff. So that was part of it. But part of it too, I think, is just a gift, just the call of God on my life to preach. Some of my earliest memories of church and preaching, kids would, go home and they would, want to be Superman or whatever, Spider-Man or the Incredible Hulk. And of course I played all those things too, but I would go home and I'd get a hairbrush and I would go stand in front of the mirror and I would preach like little guy, like 5, 6 years old. That's what I wanted to do. And, I would remember telling the mirror that it was going to hell and it better get right with God. And that was what I wanted to do. So,
did it listen? Did you get
Oh yeah. Every week there were hands going up. I would take. You remember the old school tape recorders, like flat deck, the cassette like flips down into them. Yep. And you have to hit play and record, and you can dub over. Yep. Yeah. So I had one of those, and I would record messages.
It's amazing.
And I don't have any of them. I would love to go back and listen to what 10-year-old, 9-year-old, 8-year-old Ethan thought was important to preach. But just always wanted to do that. Always wanted to express ideas.
Let's go back to your first message.
Yeah, I hope you don't have it.
All right, can we play that real quick?
Here's
We got
a clip. Yeah. Oh man.
Talk through
Theologically, it probably wasn't very sound or deep or anything. But
how nervous were you, or what? Walk us through those moments.
So I think the first message I ever preached was a funeral.
What?
So I did a funeral before. I did several funerals before I was ever in ministry or just family members. So in high school and college, did several funerals, and it was just easy for me. Pressure isn't the right word necessarily. There's not a lot of room for nerves and all that kind of stuff when you're trying to honor a family and you're trying to speak words of life into a difficult circumstance. And that was always just really easy for me. So that wasn't necessarily difficult. It was preaching for the first time in an adult service. So I started off as a student pastor. That was always more when if you speak to students, especially junior high students, that's a game of if you've ever played like a game on your phone, like Candy Crush or something like that, you have a limited number of moves before you lose the level. Yeah. That's junior high communication. You only have a couple seconds, a couple minutes, and you lose their attention. Yep. So that's a game of always changing what you're talking about, story to illustration, verse, story, illustration, verse, pray, get the heck out of there before somebody hurts somebody else. But the first adult message I ever did, that was a different story. That was like, okay, this needs to be legit. It needs to be serious. And so I walked in and was preaching at Church on the Move. Our founding pastor, Willie George, this was kind of in the just primetime heyday of his ministry.
Yeah.
He's my hero. And I walk in, he's supposed to be gone for the weekend, which is why I'm preaching. I walk in, I'm feeling great about everything. It's about 5 minutes before service starts, and he walks in. And my first thought is, no, you just preach. Whatever you're going to come up with 5 minutes to think about is going to be better than what I've worked on all week. And then he sits down right in the front row while I'm preaching. And it's just this total out-of-body experience going, is anything I'm saying accurate, good, or interesting right now? And then I remember the first Bible reference that I have in the message. I say it, turn to, Romans 8:2 or whatever it was. And I say it, and I see him turning in his Bible, and the whole time in my brain I'm thinking, is that even a verse in the Bible? What does that verse say? When he gets there, what is it? And you're just having this whole wrestling match. So it was so that was the first time I remember really being like nervous. But it was more nervous about him than it was about preaching. So I had to learn to get over that. Like your fear. Generally, I think communicators are not scared of an audience. We're scared of a person. We're scared of somebody's opinion, not everybody's opinion. We know we can do this, or we wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
It's just what is that one person going to think? Am I going to get their approval? And if we're not careful, we end up crafting a message to get them to approve of us versus preaching what we need to preach. So that was a big learning experience for me.
Been there. So our audience, we have parents, we have leaders, business leaders. What would you say? Because I believe as a leader, you have to communicate. Like you may not be standing in front of 500, 5,000. You may just be standing in front of your kids.
Yeah.
What are some tips on communicating as a leader to get your point across, to maybe get that vision across that you want from people? Do you have any tips that are kind of your go-to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do it really well, and then tell me how you did it. Would you? No, I think one of the things that we say all the time to our teams and our churches is leaders talk. You have to be comfortable. Vision is primarily shared verbally. You can do it in an email. You can do it in a written form. You can communicate facts sometimes that way, but man, communicating vision has to be done verbally. You have to be able to do it one-on-one like this, or with a group where you get in front of a group and you say, "Hey, this is where we're going. This is what this is what's happening, and this is why we need to do it." So you have to be convinced that your voice matters to the team and with what we're doing. Because I think the second you question your voice, you feel insecure about it, you sort of shrink back, and then you lose the biggest tool you have in your toolbox to move anything forward, which is your voice. And then you're questioning it. I don't think they like what I have to say. I don't think they want to hear from me, all those kind of things. So you have to be convinced, number one, that it's important that you talk. But then when you do, one of the biggest, I think, lessons that I've ever learned about leadership is really simple, but it's just the idea that leaders have to move people from here to there. And if that's the case, then all of your communication is describing here, why we can't stay here, describing there, why we must go there, and then really clearly articulating what it is that you can do to get us there and why your part matters. Because I think if people understand that and people go, okay, I get why we have to go there. Now I see what I have to do. Now I can make a decision. Now I'm not just being inspired. I'm not just being informed. I'm being invited, and I have to make a decision. Am I going with this guy? Am I going with this gal or not? So I think that's huge. And then, along the way, there's all of the practical tips of communication that we've all heard over the years that I think you just try to apply those as you can. Know your audience, be confident, all those things that, we've all heard, but I think I think if you can be confident that your voice matters and you have to talk, and then, honestly, when it comes to talking to teams, anything, vision leaks. So you have to say, leaders have to be uncomfortable tasting the same words over and over and over again. And we don't like the taste of the same words. Like I said that once, why do I have to say it again? But a leader told me once, just about the time you think you're going to throw up, if I have to say that one more time, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to be physically sick if I have to say it again. That's just about the time people are starting to get it. So you have to be willing to communicate and over-communicate and over-communicate with the same amount of passion and energy that you did the first time, and that's really difficult. Because I like new things.
Yeah, I feel the same. And I feel like we're just on repeat. And it's
Yes.
just like, why aren't they getting it?
Yes.
Because we're just thinking
I
about
said
it
that
all the time.
I told you that 2 months
Yeah.
ago. Why are you asking me about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it when somebody comes up to you and they go, I just realized something, and they have this epiphany and they're like so excited about their revelation, and you're going, I have been telling you that, preaching that for a year, and you're just now getting it. But that's the joy of leadership, is the penny drops for people at different times, and you just have to celebrate it and be comfortable with it.
Kind of switching gears, is there a failure or a parent failure that has set you up for success now? So is there something looking back that you went through where, man, you just felt like, I bombed that. I screwed that up. I messed it up.
Man, I've had a pretty good track record.
All right, we're done with this episode.
No, it's sort of more. It's like where you even start. I think when I was young, and I'm 41 now, so I mean I'm still relatively young. When I was first beginning in leadership, there was an assumption that I knew what I was doing, and so I walked into a lot of situations, several that I can think of just off the top of my head, with staff members or volunteers, people that are working on your team or people you're working with. And I was so confident. I had such a high assumption that I knew all the facts, and I just knew what to do.
Yeah.
And so you walk in, you tell people what's going on, and you sort of deal with an issue. You let somebody go, or you confront somebody with something. And instead of asking them, I just informed them. And I had no idea. One situation in particular was dealing with a staff person, had gotten some information that wasn't complete, and I thought I knew what was going on. So I went in to let them go, told them I was letting them go, told them why. They break down, they're crying. They start to inform me of some things I didn't know about, and it ended up costing me that relationship. We didn't let the staff person go, but they never fully trusted me or had a great relationship with me after that, because instead of being an advocate for them, I was just coming in to deal with an issue, because it's like, I got to deal with this issue. I'm going to be the decisive leader. I'm going to take care of this. And instead of coming in as a learner to ask questions and find out what their perspective was, it really hurt me. But it helped me later on to know when I hear something or I have an instinct and I just want to act on something, to really slow down and try to understand a little bit more of what's going on and be for the person, not just for the result. And that was difficult early on to see, because I think when you're young, you want to be confident and you want to project that confidence. So yeah, I mean, I think that's one. Don't spend money without checking with your wife. I don't know. I mean, there's 100 lessons there, right? But I think if there was one overarching theme for me in the lessons that I learned, it goes back to what you were talking about with talking.
Yeah.
Be slow to speak,
Yeah.
quick to listen.
Yeah.
I think that's just something I've learned over and over again, and probably is something God's had to go, hey, you may not know all the details, like get some more information before you act. So that would be one thing I would say.
So taking it away from talking, we're going to go to reading. What's a book that you have recommended over and over to people that you might say, hey, you need to read this? Yeah.
So my mom, when I was really little, just instilled in me a love of reading. What I didn't have a love of was reading nonfiction. So I love to read. I would read books about, and nonfiction maybe. I didn't necessarily love reading leadership or theology. I loved reading history, biographies, fiction, loved all that. But I didn't really have a love for reading those things. But there were a couple of books that really kind of changed that for me and helped me go, oh, there's more here than I realized. And this really resonated with me. And I think I'm interested in some of these things. And so on a leadership level, there's some great Patrick Lencioni books. The 4 Habits of Successful CEO by Patrick Lencioni is a really fascinating read. And I loved some of the early books that I read from Andy Stanley that were similar to some of those Patrick Lencioni books that were like they'd tell a parable and then they'd unpack the parable. So those books kind of helped me turn the corner on leadership reading. So those have been books I've gone back to or handed to other people that maybe were in a similar boat. The Reason for God from Tim Keller is just like, it'll blow your mind, and you're kind of like, okay, this is like, I've got to stop every 2 pages and really think deep about this. Christ the King by Tim Keller is probably one on discipleship that I've gone back to over and over again with people, especially there's people that are maybe going from casual American, I go to church, my parents made me go to church, but I don't really have a relationship with God that's my own. Christ the King is really, I think, a beautiful book on that. So those are just a couple off the top of my head.
Is there something, because I know just talking with people, sometimes the Bible's just hard to read.
Yeah.
It can feel kind of boring and just not relevant for today's culture. Is there something, how do you deal with that? How, as a pastor, what would you say, hey, check out this or try this? Are there different things that can kind of freshen it up?
Yeah, so one of the things I think I was most surprised at when I first started hearing people in my small group talk about their Bible reading experience, I was surprised how many people didn't know or understand or think about Bible commentaries. That they thought, well, in fact, there was one person that was in our small group, and they had never read a Bible commentary before. And I was really surprised by that, partly just because of maybe my interest in the Bible, and so I loved Bible commentaries. Since I had my real Jesus experience in high school, just going, oh man, I want to consume more. But one of the things I love to tell people is there are great books on just about any topic you would want to read biblically. So that's a place you can start. One of the most helpful places to start is as you're reading through. Now, thankfully, the Bible app and some of those resources have helped us digitally create conversations. But if you can create a conversation between you and a Bible scholar, that I'm not saying call them up. I'm saying if you can read what a Bible scholar has written about the text that you're reading, that's to me one of the best places to start versus trying to find the perfect book for what you're going through. Yeah. The Bible is the perfect book for whatever you're facing. So the Blue Letter Bible Hub, which is just a website. So if you're familiar with Bible Gateway, it's one of the first places your Safari will kick you if you look up, John 3:16, it'll kick you to Bible Gateway. Bible Hub is a verse-by-verse comparison of translations of the Bible. So what it'll do is it'll tell you what a verse says, but it'll tell you in a bunch of different translations. Well, as you're going through your Bible reading plan, if you'll use that it'll also give you a list of a bunch of Bible commentaries. So you don't have to go out and buy 20 Bible commentaries to have sitting there with you. There are several Bible commentaries that I think are awesome. Matthew Henry is the most read, probably, Bible commentary, but there are a couple others. Ellicott is another Bible commentary that's usually one of the top ones on Bible Hub, but it's much more current, I feel like, than some of the others. And what I think happens is if you'll read what somebody else has noticed in the Bible, it helps me notice things that are below the surface. So instead of just reading the surface level text, you're able to go, oh, I didn't even notice that there was another dimension to that. And then it opens up your mind to start noticing other dimensions that maybe the Holy Spirit's trying to show you with a particular text to apply it to your life. So that's one of the best places I think to start is everybody's going to have a book to recommend when you're going through a tough time. Your parents got divorced, you lost your job. Everybody's got 20 books that they want you to read. But if you're not reading what really smart people have noticed in the Bible, I think you're missing a massive element of God speaking to you.
Yeah, you mentioned Blue Letter Bible. They have a commentary by David Guzik or Guzik.
Yep.
It's a great way to dive into commentaries.
Yep.
Matthew Henry, super dense, and you have to reread the sentences like 3 times.
Yeah, what are you saying here? Yeah.
I don't get that.
Yeah, Guzik's good.
Yeah, he's amazing. And then even the ESV Study Bible, I use that a lot. It's got the commentary as I read, and it's just
a Bible with commentary is awesome. If you can find one that you like, that's huge
right
because it's just all in the same spot.
Okay, if you were able to put a giant billboard up in Tulsa, what would it say and why?
Come on, a giant billboard up in Tulsa. What would it say? That's a great question. I love words, and there probably aren't enough there's not enough space for the words that I would want to say on the billboard. That's a great question. I think what I worry about people not believing or not understanding that I would hope people would feel and understand is that God cares and he's close. That I think there are a lot of conversations I'm having with people where God either feels distant to them or, if they've crossed the line of believing that there is a God at all, but just that I don't know that he really truly has answers and cares about what I'm going through. And I think the second somebody can cross that line and believe that God actually is close and he really does care about what's going on in my life, it opens up all of God's answers, all of the conviction and the work of the Holy Spirit to get rid of the junk and help us deal with things that bring regret into our life and things that we don't want to be doing in the first place, hang-ups and habits, conflict with our spouse, trouble with our kids. All of those things find their answer in this idea that God really is close and he cares. And that, like, if I could just get people to believe that, I think it changes everything for a person.
Yeah. Last question. We'll close with this. What are you growing through? So what is God in this moment showing you, maybe dealing with you, showing you? What is that? What are you growing through?
Yeah, I'm an impatient person. So this has been a season of really trusting the process. I don't know when, somebody might be watching this. We're recording this during the tail end of the lockdown of COVID. We're able to be within 6 feet of each other right now, so that's good. We're starting to emerge. I'm an extrovert. I don't like, church online is here to stay. We're taking church to where people are. Yeah. This is an example. You can electronically go to talk to people when I don't even know who half the people are probably watching, right? Or listening. But, I don't like church online, like necessarily. Like I love the presence of people and the relational aspect of people. I don't like the lockdown. I don't like, I love the Sabbath idea. Like I love the idea of like a vacation. Like that's awesome. Yeah. But at a certain point, it's like I'm getting stir crazy. Yep. That's been a real opportunity for God to continue to work patience in me. And continue to, just for our church, there's like 100 things that we put on hold, right? When all this happened. And so all of those things just going, you're in such little control all the time. This is just a chance for you to realize how little control you actually have and how much I really just need you to trust me and be present. Wow. And so I think that's been just something that I hope that what he's doing in me continues on into the future, just to really be present, to be able to just park and sit and love people and be what God wants you to be in the moment instead of thinking 20 steps down the road. And so that's been a big part of it. Yeah. Just with your kids, with your wife, everything.
That's awesome. Hey.
With your diet, all of it.
Oh, let's not even talk about that. Maybe
Oreos
that's episode 2.
Yeah, come on.
Bring that back. That's right. Hey, thanks for joining us on the very first episode of Talk It Out. Come on. Hey, guys, we will see you next week.